Got special coverage here on SNY. Gary Apple, Anthony McCarron inside our SNY studios. Go to take out Citi Field just a matter of moments here as the Mets are getting set to introduce their new third baseman. That is Bichette, 3 years, $126 million. We're going to hear from Bo. We'll hear from the Mets president of baseball operations, David Stearns, coming up here in just a couple of minutes. So what about the significance of this day for the New York Mets?
It's huge. I mean, he was one of the best guys on this free agent market, Gary, and it's a great addition, especially offensively, to this Met team, this Met lineup. I mean, he's a dynamic offensive player. And look, I appreciate the fact that he's got a little dash and a little flair in him, too. And that will play well with fans. I think he right-handed fits nicely into that lineup. He's not one of those all or nothing, homer, strikeout, walk, 3 true outcomes guys. Right. He puts the ball in play, and that's a skill that I think that the Met lineup could have really used, and they've got it now. There
was so much talk during the weeks leading up to this signing, and right before the pivot here to Bichette, the Mets missed out on Kyle Tucker. Does Bichette fit better from the standpoint, you mentioned it, that he's a right-handed bat as opposed to Tucker, who's that lefty bat?
Yes, for me, Gary, yes, he definitely does lineup-wise. We will see on defense because that's a new position for him. Third base, obviously, has not played it in the majors or the minors, so he's got some work to do to learn it. He's got some work to do to prove that he can handle it. I think that he can. He's coming down the defensive spectrum, as they say, from shortstop to third. But really, the big ticket here is the bat and the fact that he, my favorite stat about him is he batted .311 last year. I know batting average isn't cool, Gary, but he was second in the AL to Aaron Judge in the batting race. There were only 7 guys in Major League Baseball who were qualified who also hit 300 or above.
Right.
I mean, that's a good thing to have. The Blue Jays put the ball in play during the playoffs, and it worked out great for them as they got all the way to Game 7. They were a great example, and this is part of this guy's game.
And I think take a step beyond that. Aside from the batting average, hit .381 with runners in scoring position, which was tops in all of baseball. Why do you think, as you look at him up there at the plate, why do you think he succeeds in those situations?
It's a great question, Gary. The industry is sort of split on whether clutch actually exists, right? Like we love the stories and the lore of the postseason Lions who crush in October and all this sort of thing. But who knows?
We shall see. I believe it does exist. Let's go out Citi Field right now for the introduction here of Bichette.
This just in. Literally. This just in. Literally. This is breaking. Bichette to the Mets.
Fit for the Mets.
If that doesn't get you fired up for baseball on a cold January morning, I don't know what will. Thank you. We'd like to welcome everybody, including the audiences on Met Social, SNY, and MLB Network. On the dais, we have the president of baseball operations for the New York Mets, David Stearns, Bichette, Greg Genske, and Joe Mizzo from Viner Sports. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to David.
Thank you, Ethan. And thanks, everyone, for coming. Good afternoon. It's an exciting day for all of us. I think it's probably an exciting day for Bo, as well as we officially welcome Bo to our organization. Bo's accomplishments and talents on the field are very well covered. He's one of the most complete right-handed hitters in our sport. Incredible knowledge of the game, incredible baseball aptitude. Anyone who's watched him for a long time sees that very, very clearly. And he intensely wants to win. And I think throughout this process, it's that intense desire to win that came through loud and clear, whether we were talking to Bo's representatives, whether we were talking to Bo himself. It became very clear that that was the priority for Bo. Regardless of what position he was going to play, regardless of where in the country he was going to live, it was about winning. And I think our objectives are very well aligned there. I want to thank Bo's representatives, Greg Genske, Joe Mizzo, for their communication, their efforts throughout this process. I want to thank our owners, Steve and Alex Cohen, for their unending support for our baseball operation. It's their commitment to our organization that makes days like this possible for all of us. I think all of us have been watching you for a long time, whether it's on TV, across the field, competing against you. And I think we're all going to enjoy it a lot more with Mets across your chest. So let's see how that looks.
Let's do it.
Congratulations.
And now some opening remarks from Bo.
Yeah, so it's very exciting to be here. This has been an exciting time for me. A lot of, several conversations with teams, several good conversations, but with a lot of prayer and conversations with my family and my agents and even some friends, came to the conclusion that it was very obvious that I wanted to be a Met. Mr. Cohen and David have put together an organization that is looking to win every single year, has an opportunity to win a World Series every single year, and a roster that backs that up. And it's very exciting to be a part of the city, one of the best cities in the world, maybe the best city in the world. Fans, some of the best fans in the world, and all of that is something I've always wanted to be a part of. So excited to be here and excited to be a Met.
Great. We have 2 microphones, one on each side of the room. Please raise your hand and identify your media outlet and your name. I'd like to start with Steve in the back.
Hey, both Steve Gelbs, SNY. Congratulations, welcome to New York. You just mentioned that you had conversations with plenty of teams, and after a bunch of conversations with your family and representatives, this became the clear option. What was it in totality about this organization and the conversations you had that made you know this is where you wanted to be?
Yeah, my first priority is winning. And obviously this organization is doing everything they can to do that. The roster is great, like I said. And then on top of that, just, playing in front of fans like this is a pretty cool opportunity. And, I'm excited to get out there.
Anthony Tacoma on MLB.com. Bo, obviously you haven't played over here. Obviously you haven't played third base as a professional. Just what was that conversation like when it was broached to you? Is that something? How open were you during the free agent process in general, and how do you expect that transition to go?
I was open to doing anything if it felt like the place I needed to be, and like I said, it became very clear that I wanted to be a Met.
I know you had a very good relationship with Marcus Semien. How much did that also play into you wanting to play with him again?
Yeah, I don't think my decision was based on Marcus, but it definitely didn't hurt. That was someone who taught me the ropes, showed me how to be professional, showed me how to go about the game, and someone I respected a ton, and definitely adds to the excitement to be able to play with him again.
Well, Bruce Beck from NBC4 New York, your ability to come through with runners in scoring position, is there something that happens to you? Do your eyes light up? Why do you thrive in those situations? And do you hope to show the fans of New York the same thing?
Of course I do. to win ball games, you got to score runs, and that should really be the only goal of an offense is get runs across the board. So I don't know if my eyes light up or anything like that, but definitely probably get a little bit more focus. And, my dad taught me a lot about it. That's all I heard about growing up was driving and runs, so I've put a lot of work into it.
John in the back.
John Heyman for Bo, and anyone else who wants to answer. You have a very favorable opt-out option in there, and you're obviously got youth on your side. I guess you're almost 28, going to be 28. Should anybody look at this as a potential one-year deal? How are you looking at this?
John, thanks for your question. Good afternoon, everybody. We had a lot of conversations about the different structure of the deal, and Bo had his choice of long-term deals, shorter-term deals, opt-outs. I think the important thing to know here is he's coming here because he's committed to this team. His priority was finding a place where he felt like he could get better as a player and have a chance to compete for championships. And he's making this commitment to come here and hopefully for a long time. Certainly it was important, given his age, as you mentioned, John, that we preserve optionality. But his commitment is to the Mets. His desire is to be here. His desire is to compete for championships here.
Keith.
Hey, Bo. Keith Rad, Mets Radio. I think after the World Series, everybody was so excited watching Toronto put the ball in play, and that's kind of been your career. What do you hope that you can bring to this lineup, the rest of the lineup, as you have that same philosophy?
Yeah, I think my goal as a player, especially as I've gotten older, is just understanding who I am as a player, understanding who I am as a hitter, and then going out there and just being the best that I can be at that. And I think that just comes from having my goal as being the absolute toughest out I can possibly be every single time I go up to the bat. And a lot of times, if you have that mindset, it becomes a little bit tougher to strike out. But, I'm not, striking out or not striking out is not my goal. My goal is to go up there and just be a competitive at bat every single time.
Alrighty. Before we break out into the group sessions here, we'd like to invite the Bashette family and Carlos Mendoza to the front to take some group photos. Once that's completed, the television stations will move to the front of the stage to do some group interviews, and the print media will move to my left. Thank you, everybody.
All right, so that is Dante Bichette, introduced by David Stearns. I take it back, Bo Bashette, his father, Dante Bichette, who he referenced right there, the fact that he grew up and talking about driving in runs. That is something he learned from his father over the years. And, of course, 27, almost 28 years old now, has turned into one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball. Gary Apple back alongside Anthony McCarron, going to be joined by Steve Gelbs with Bo Bashette coming up here in just a little bit. But what did you take out of what he had to say there, Anth?
I love the part about he wants to be the absolute toughest out that he can be, and that's the kind of player that he has been throughout the early part of his career here. You're right. One of the great things about Bo Bashette is that he's going to be 28 in March, and so the youth is incredible there. He's got a lot of prime left going forward here. He's already been that guy, so he's sort of accomplished that goal. He wants it to be an ongoing thing, and I also love the thing about his dad, driving runs, like beating that into him a little bit with, in talks, because that is such a huge part of the game. And, Dante Bichette was really good at it. He had 274 career home runs, Gary, 850-plus OPS. He was a very good hitter. And he probably had a little more power than Bo has. But Bo's got some real genuine pop. He's got a 29-homer season on his resume, 44 doubles, I think, last year. So he can get extra base hits going. But, yeah, it's very impressive. And the winning part, of course, and the wanting to play in front of Met fans, that's like catnip to Met fans, too, when you acknowledge them in some way. So that was smart by him, or whoever told him to do that. That's good thinking. And then the part about him, and David Stearns mentioned it too, the winning and the fact that he is intensely focused on winning. It's a big deal.
Winning and the baseball aptitude is something that David mentioned right there. And I think both of those things are really important because they wanted to change the culture. That was one of the things that David set out to do this offseason. And, man, it's been in many ways here a wholesale change.
Yes, absolutely. These two guys in the middle infield, infield now, or in the infield now, with Bichette and Marcus Semien, who are both thought to be gritty guys. They've both been that way their whole career. Marcus Semien is one of the great sort of, he was taken under his wing early, under Ron Washington's wing early in his career, the great infield instructor who taught him how to be a middle infielder and really get the most out of him. And I think Marcus Semien has used that experience to give it to teammates, too, younger teammates like Bichette. You saw the clip on the internet, that somebody rustled up from when Marcus Semien left the Blue Jays when they were teammates. Yeah, and Bichette was in tears about him going. It was very emotional for him. So that's the kind of guy Semien is. And if you're bringing Bichette in, he didn't come just to play with Marcus Semien. Right. But it didn't hurt that he's here and they can establish something in that clubhouse.
And that's what he said. He said it wasn't the sole focus in making the decision to come to the Mets. But as you said, it didn't hurt. And I think that's important here, that there's already a relationship as he comes in and tries to fit into that clubhouse seamlessly, which is something that the Mets are hoping for. Let's go back out Citi Field right now. Steve Gelbs is standing by with Bichette. Steve, take it away.
All right, Gary, thanks so much. Here with the man of the hour, Bichette. Bo, congratulations once again and welcome to New York. For a lot of people on the outside, this seemed like it came out of nowhere. I know it didn't, though. What was the lead up, the level of conversation that you had with the Mets prior to officially agreeing and the announcement coming down?
Yeah, there was conversations from the beginning of the offseason showing their interest, but yeah, it definitely sped up there at the end.
So you are somebody that David Stern spoke a lot about, your competitive nature and how badly you want to win. How would you describe the way that you compete on the baseball field?
Yeah, I just feel like I'm at my best when I'm competing. Not thinking about, baseball per se. I'm just thinking about how to beat the opponent. And I think that's why I love baseball. I don't know if I'm in love with the game as much as I'm in love with competing. So, yeah, I really can't wait to get out in front of these fans and do that.
Yeah, you certainly know what it's like to play in pretty charged atmospheres. You mentioned how this is one of, if not the greatest city in the world, certainly a passionate fan base. Just how big of a draw was that for you?
Yeah, huge draw. This is one of my favorite stadiums. Being a visiting player, coming here and the atmosphere, unbelievable fans that hold you to a high standard, and I'm excited to meet that standard and try and help this team win a World Series.
Bo, when we talk about the modern game today, it seems like so much of batting average has been diminished, and people don't talk about it as much. It's all about doing damage, and certainly you can do that as well. But how would you describe what your hitting philosophy is and the way you approach things offensively?
Yeah, like I said, my first goal is to have competitive at-bats, never give in. But, I just want to be able to handle I want to be prepared for any way a pitcher is going to attack me, and that's what I do every single day. I prepare to be able to handle any pitch. I prepare for an approach that I see fit for that day, and it changes all the time, but, that's my goal every day, is to have an opportunity to be able to adjust to anything that might happen.
I know you were asked about your career numbers with runners in scoring position. Career 330, that doesn't happen by accident. And I know there would be a lot of people that would say, that's not a skill to hit with runners in scoring position. I'm assuming you disagree with that. What would you say your best asset is when the moment matters the most?
I think the focus just ticks up a notch. Obviously the goal is to be at an extreme level of focus every single time you step up the plate. Easier said than done sometimes when you have 650 at-bats a year, but the goal is to get runs across, so when you have those opportunities, you have to meet the moment, and I think I've done a decent job of that.
Certainly after you signed with the Mets, the clip began circulating where you got emotional talking about Marcus Semien and what he's meant to you. Now you're reunited with him. What can Mets fans expect out of him, both what they'll see on the field and behind the curtain as this group really tries to instill a good culture over here?
Yeah, I have a special relationship with him. I think he's a special leader, a special person, someone who goes about it the right way, who is fully invested in being the best version of himself, and someone that I looked up to when I was a younger player. And yeah, I'm just excited to go play with him again. And a lot of these guys here, man, there's a ton of talent, guys who have led teams to very important games, and I'm excited to just fit in where I can.
All right, finally, Bo, we know you're making a position change from shortstop to third base. You were open about being willing to do that all offseason. What do you think the biggest challenge will be in making that change, and how you plan on attacking that work? Well,
I know there's going to be challenges, and I know if I'm going to get to a point where I'm a a really good third baseman. It's going to be a lot of work, and I'm going to put in that work. So I'm not sure what challenges. I think that there's some more intricacies with third base that people don't realize, where to be, where to play, and those are things I'm going to have to learn, and we'll get after it.
All right, Bo Bashette, congratulations again. Thanks so much for the time. We'll be seeing you soon in Port St. Lucie. Guys, that is the newest Met, Bo Bashette. Send it back to you.
All right, Steve, we thank you, and Bo as well. Back to you, Steve, just a minute with the president of baseball operations, David Stearns. That's on the way. I do want to follow on what Steve was asking Bo right there about that transition over to third base. How big a deal do you think that is?
Well, he's got the skill set, I think, to tackle it, Gary, right? I mean, he's going down from a more difficult defensive position as shortstop to third base. It's a different position, though, because it's a lot of quickness and reaction, whereas range is much more of a big deal as a shortstop. So will he have the arm to play there? That's one of the questions I think he may have to answer. But if it was good enough for shortstop, then I have a feeling it's going to be good enough for third. He certainly sounds like he's going to put in the work to get to be a competent and even good third baseman. Look, I mean, I'm not sure that in year one the Mets are looking for him to be Mike Schmidt or Adrian Beltre at third. But when the ball is hit to him and it's here and he can reach it and get to it and make the play, it has to be an out. So that's the sort of level, the first level that he's got to get to defensively.
Yeah, one of the things he also has spoken about here over the course of the last 15 or 20 minutes at the dais and then with Steve, is just winning, right? All about winning. His at-bats are based on competition and winning. Have the Mets missed that over the course of the last season?
I think any team can use another dose of that. I mean, it's not to say they didn't have good players in the past, Gary, because they did, successful players.
Yes, but they only won 83 games last year.
Yes, right. Obviously, there needed to be a switch. The lineup last year was the Fab Four, and then there was a cliff that the rest of it went off, and that was a problem. This adds exceptional length, and other things they've done this winter as well will have added some length to it. So I do like the idea. I mean, if you tuck Bo Bichette third behind Juan Soto, I mean, that's a difficult thing to navigate for the opposing pitcher and the opposing manager later in the game as well, because, you're going to get, Juan is going to do damage. He'll walk, so he'll be on base a lot. I would imagine Bo Bichette's going to have plenty of RBI opportunity. And Gary, as he mentioned again, meeting the moment, he thinks he's done a pretty good job about it. I take you back to Game 7 of the World Series.
Sure.
They'd be singing songs about that 3-run homer he hit off Shohei Ohtani if the World Series had ended a little bit differently, right? This is a guy who he was playing great for the previous 2 months, then got to September and got hurt, and then he missed the early part of the postseason, was back for the World Series, and it was like he never went anywhere.
Right.
So, he can rise to the occasion, as he said, and, whatever you think about clutch, real, unreal, this guy has a long track record. I mean, I think his career OPS with runners in scoring position is over 1,000. I mean, that's very, very impressive. That's not just like 1 year fluke.
Yeah, one of the things we know is that he played in Toronto, and it's a rabid fan base up there as well, with a very wealthy owner coming into a similar situation here. I don't see, and he's referenced a couple of times, playing in New York. He likes playing at Citi Field. He knows about the fan base and how much that, listen, you've got to perform here, otherwise you're going to hear it from this fan base. But I don't think he's going to be rattled by that. Some guys, that transition to New York, certain guys struggle with it. Coming from Toronto, I don't think that's going to be a factor here.
I don't either, Gary, and I think it speaks well of him that he actually sort of got into it immediately and said, that's part of the reason why he wanted to be here. Because, look, I mean, big-time players like the scrutiny. I mean, some guys shy away from it, but if you are having success and you're as good and talented as this guy is, and you get a chance to play in a place where they're going to be micromanaging every move that he makes. Why did he take that 2-1 pitch there? Why?
Of course.
That was so hittable. So, I think he's got the right mindset going in.
How about the pivot? And we spoke about it when we came on the air a short time ago. The fact that it looked like he was ticketed for Philadelphia. And we know they're bitter down there in Philadelphia over this. But as Steve asked him, and Steve has been steadfast on this, and he reiterated the fact that it was not the case. This was not like a spur-of-the-moment thing. They had been in discussions. They had spoken for many weeks. This was not something that just happened. But where do you go when it comes to David Stearns and giving him credit to immediately, and the Cohens, Steve and Alex, to make this pivot on such a quick basis?
Gary, I think this is a great job by David Stearns, because as the head of the baseball operations of the New York Mets, a team with with this much talent and this much payroll ability and the ability to spend, you need to know what every big free agent on the market wants, is interested in. Would they come here? Are they interested at all?
Right.
Are they shying away from New York? So it speaks very well of David that he knew the answer to that and that this was something that he could pivot to instead of be like, Kyle Tucker said no, so now we're sort of casting around to see what we can get. Like, no, he was like, okay, we know where Bo is and we know what he thinks, and this would be a good player for us too. So that's the way you do that job, and that's why he is in that job and why he's thought of the way he is.
Yeah, and it's been a very, listen, the focus has been on David Stearns this offseason. The microscope has been very blaring on him.
As well it should be.
As it should be, absolutely. Third year on the job, a lot of changes to this team. When you look at the lineup, and a lot of subtractions and now a lot of additions, do you think the lineup, and we're going to get to, listen, the Mets acquired reportedly Luis Robert Jr. last night in a trade with the White Sox, sent Luis Angel Acuna. Say one more time. Yeah, that deal is confirmed now. Luis Robert Jr. going to play center field for the Mets. When you look at the lineup now as compared to the end of last season, which is a better lineup?
I would take now, and that's without having seen this lineup play together. We don't know how it's going to be constructed, what Carlos Mendoza is going to do with the bottom part of it. But look, I like the potential there, and I feel like there's going to be some jump up from a guy like Francisco Alvarez because he's got so much talent and so much promise, and that would impact this lineup in a huge way as well. I mean, Luis Robert is a guy who has power and speed, and if he is healthy, he can be incredibly dynamic. At one point, Gary, he looked like one of the up-and-coming superstars of this game. Injuries have taken their toll, obviously, and curtailed his production big time. But I think that's a nice risk that the Mets took with him. And I mean, Soto, a year more comfortable in New York, in Citi Field, in Queens as a Met, and another, I mean, he's going to put up his numbers. And then Bo Bichette behind him is a nice place to be. And I'm not leaving Francisco Lindor out at the top of that lineup because he is spectacular and splendid as well. And so, you look, and I think Jorge Polanco, people are thinking, we're concentrating on, well, he hasn't really played first base a lot. So what's that going to be like? Well, we'll see. But the offense is going to be there. He is a trusted offensive performer. As we looked at that lineup there, one of the things that really jumps out at me, this is a more athletic team. Yeah. And I think the Mets needed to get more athletic. Listen, Jeff Pass on ESPN reporting that the Yankees now are in agreement on a deal with Cody Bellinger. So he appears to be off the board. But when that trade went down with Luis Robert Jr. last night, I think we thought that was going to be the case. Never say never. Right. But so it looks like it's going to be Robert Jr. in center field and then Juan Soto in right field. Potentially Carson Bench in left, or they go out and get somebody else. That outfield alignment, are you comfortable with that as it stands right now? I am. And I go back to something that David Stearns said earlier in the offseason, Gary, with you have to have places for the young guys who are knocking on the door. You have to have places for them to play. And I feel like there's a runway for Carson Bench to make it to the major leagues. Now, it is a risk. One of the reasons I like the Luis Robert deal is because it sort of lessens the kind of pressure and the urgency to get Carson Bench into the majors immediately, because he's played exactly 56 games above high A Brooklyn. Right. That's not exactly a 1,000 minor league at bats at the highest level. So, this will, everybody can calm down about Carson Bench. He's going to be a really good player. He's very promising. But if he pushes his way to the top, then left field is sort of there for him, or at least part of left field is there for him. So that, the thing about that I like a lot. And then Luis Robert he's a fly catcher. And a terrific defender out there. Yes, exactly. And David Stearns, as we know, up the middle defense is the big thing. So while we're all gnashing our teeth about the corners and left field and all the defense there, that has been that's less than shortstop, second base, center field, and catcher. And now they're super strong in center as well, with a guy who could, if he's healthy, hit 30 home runs too. But he's got to be healthy. Yep, that's the big risk. Well, I think you hit it on the head right there. All this discussion about defense and run prevention, how important it is, and how David Stearns has spoken about that so much since the end of last season, up the middle, which is so key here.
They are solid now.
Yeah.
They were solid before with Tyrone Taylor, but he's not an everyday player. But Luis Robert Jr. in center, and then Lindor, and then Semien at second base, and Alvarez behind the plate. That's solid up the middle.
Right. And that, look, obviously David Stearns was displeased with the defense on the Mets last year. And, I thought it was very compelling at the luncheon he had recently where he talked about calling around to the rest of Major League Baseball and to people that he knows in front offices and coaches, et cetera. And what do you got on us? And they all were like, defense.
All right, let's go back out Citi Field right now. Steve Gelbs standing by with David Stearns. Back to you, Steve.
All right, Gary, thanks a lot. David, you mentioned this in the release when you guys signed Bo, and certainly brought it up again today, the competitive nature. We know what Bo Bichette is as a player, but what have you seen and what have you heard about Bichette in terms of the compete level that was intriguing to you?
Well, I think anytime you watch this guy play at any point in his career, it's very clear that he's playing hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like that comes through. And then when we began to do our research on him, talking to teammates, talking to coaches, that's when it really became apparent that his desire to win, how he prioritizes his life to win, it really takes it to a different level. And when we really began talking with Bo this offseason, that was part of every conversation. Want to make sure that he was going to go to a place that had a real chance to win a World Series, and we're certainly, very much in agreement that that's our goal.
As you've restructured this roster, it feels like there's a common theme with a lot of the moves you've made, where guys are more contact hitters, less strikeout, less swing and miss. Was that just the way that things fell, the opportunities fell, or was that a big priority as you look to shift your offensive profile?
I don't know that contact per se was the priority. We want to be able to take competitive at-bats up and down our lineup. We want to be in every at-bat. We don't want to give at-bats away. So I think that was a priority. Guys who take each and every at-bat very seriously, regardless of where you are in the season, regardless of what the score is. And I think we've improved there. I think we've got a lineup combining what we have here existing with some of our young players coming up and some of the additions we've brought in from the outside, where we're going to see highly competitive at-bats 1 through 9.
330 career hitter with runners in scoring position, and I know that there's always a debate. I talked to Bo about this as well. Is it a skill? Is it luck? When you see those types of numbers, though, how much credence do you give to the fact that is a skill and something that he is genuinely good at doing?
We've talked about this before as teams have gone well or not well in terms of clutch hitting. I think there is a skill to regulating yourself. I think there is a skill to slowing it down, to regulating your heartbeat, to staying in the moment when the moment matters the most. And I think there are people and players who can do that, and Bo has certainly demonstrated he can. Everything behind the batting average backs up that he's really good in clutch situations. He's taking really good at bats in clutch situations. And so if you do that, more often than not, you're going to get a good result.
David, you have talked often about prioritizing defense this offseason. Bo's another player that you're going to be asked to shift positions. What do you see in the way that he has handled shortstop that makes you believe he is going to be an upgrade defensively as well at third base?
Yeah, so I think in general the players we are asking to shift positions, we're potentially going to have 4 shortstops on the dirt a lot of days this season, and from a range perspective, that's a real advantage. We should be able to cover a lot of ground. Now, there's certainly going to be learning moments for Bo and Jorge Polanco as well, as they understand the intricacies of their positions. But with Bo, we're talking again about someone who understands the game so well, has been around the game his entire life, has a great work ethic on the field, has the aptitude. We believe he's going to get there and get there pretty fast.
There is a center fielder now on the roster that nobody can doubt his defensive acumen for sure in Luis Robert, that trade coming down last night. What was it about that player, who's certainly been connected to you guys for a long time, that felt like he was a good fit and someone who you could possibly tap into the offensive potential that we've seen in the past?
Yeah, as we looked at Luis Robert, we saw so many of the same skills and tools that allowed him to be an elite player just a couple years ago. All of that is still there. And when you see those underlying skills and tools at such a high level, it makes you want to get that guy in your organization. We'll do everything we can to bring the best out of him. We'll do everything we can to keep him on the field, make him comfortable. And look, sometimes just a change of place, a change of scenery gives someone a little bit of new perspective. And we don't really know what that is. We don't really know why, but we've all seen it plenty of times in sports. And Luis certainly could be a guy like that.
All right, real fast, two more for you. With the addition of Luis Robert, do you feel like you guys are done adding to the outfielder? As I know you like to say it's never finished, we're never quite done, but do you feel pretty good about what you have in the outfield, or do you still feel like you could add one more?
I feel good about our position player grouping as a whole. I think we have a group that complements each other very well, a group that fits pretty well together. As you said, we're never going to stop looking. And this point in the offseason in particular, things pop up that you don't anticipate. Things can change pretty quickly. But I am happy with the position player grouping we have right now.
All right, so you said the position player grouping. What about the pitching side? How determined are you to still find a starting pitcher to add to the staff?
My preference is to add a starting pitcher. I've been open and honest about that through the entirety of the offseason. I can't say with certainty we're going to be able to do that, but we remain engaged on a number of different fronts in that market. We still got plenty of time to go in the offseason, certainly plenty of time before opening day, and so we'll see where it heads.
All right, David, thank you so much for the time. As always, we'll see you in a few weeks.
Appreciate it.
All right, he is the Mets President of Baseball Operations, David Stearns. Let's send it back to you now in the studio, Gary.
All right, Steve and David, we thank you both. Let's follow on what they were speaking about right there. David feels pretty comfortable with where the position group is at the moment. I still won't be surprised if they do add another outfielder in some way, shape, or form. But he did admit he'd like to add another starting pitcher here, at least one starting pitcher.
I would like them very much to add
They
one,
need
too.
to add another starting pitcher.
Yeah, they need to. And all the work that they've done so far this offseason, Gary, which has been extensive, and they have reshaped a lot of different things here. I think it would be, I don't know, short-sighted to not get somebody here. And I know that the prices are high for the free agents. Prices are high in terms of prospects for trades. But I think this team needs that top of the rotation kind of guy. And if there's one that is to the Mets' liking out there, whether it's Framber Valdez or whether it is Freddie Peralta in a trade, then I think they need to make that a priority and make it happen before spring training. We're not that far away from spring training.
Right, a couple of weeks away. And David knows that. I mean, listen, what was the downfall of this team last year? A lot of things went into what the collapse that happened after they had the best record in baseball in the month of June, and then it all fell apart. But the bottom line was the pitching didn't hold up.
Right.
Starting pitching didn't hold up. It bled into the bullpen. They need starting pitching. David knows that. That's a huge priority here. As you say, might it be Framber Valdez? Might it be Freddie Peralta in a trade? Might it be Zach Gallen? Skubal?
Another good one.
Never outright, never out of the question that they'll do something huge before this is all said and done. I do want to go, and we had the lineup up a short time ago. I want to go back to that lineup and look at it because he said he believes competitive at-bats are in play here, up and down that lineup, without giving away at-bats at any time, depending on what the game situation is.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that that is something that they are aspiring to, and I think that's something that they can reasonably expect with what we're looking at here, especially if Luis Robert is healthy. I mean, that to me looks like an early look at their lineup with subject to seismic change as the season goes on. Look, if Francisco Alvarez, and I know I've talked about him, and I'll keep talking about him, Gary, until he does explode as an offensive player, but he could find himself batting right behind Polanco on May 1st if he gets off to a good start and things are going well there. So there's a lot to like about what their lineup is. And really, we mentioned it before, but last year, the Fab Four was wonderful. And that was must-see viewing when you were at the ballpark or watching on TV. And then the rest of the guys were like, okay, sort of interesting, but not as threatening as I think that this lineup is going to be.
One of the other things David Stern spoke about, he said, we basically have 4 shortstops now on the dirt, right? And he's interested to see how that's going to play out. How do you think that's going to play out?
Well, it's by far the hardest defensive position, right? So these guys all have the hands to play wherever it is in the infield. So I feel good about that part. Look, Are there going to be the growing pains that David mentioned for Bo at third and Polanco at first? Yeah, I mean, there will be. There's nuance to both positions.
Sure.
Everybody, ever since Moneyball, we've all been, first base has been what it has been in terms of a punchline, but you really found out in that movie how difficult it can be to play. It's not just put the big guy over there and he'll, knock down a few errant throws. There's a lot more to it than that, and we've seen it in New York with Don Mattingly and Keith Hernandez, who played that position for years with like virtuoso skill, so we know how good it can be. That's a lot to ask of Polanco early on, but they do have the clay is there for these guys to be competent.
Sure. By the way, we're showing in that lineup Brett Beatty as a potential DH. He could see time out in left field. And somebody we're not talking about at all here is Mark Vientos.
Yeah.
If he can bounce back and be that guy we saw a couple of years ago and hit 25, 30 home runs from the right side and play some first base, that's an important bat that could be overlooked here as we get ready to go down to spring training here in a short time. As we sit right now, as we get set to wrap this up, are the Mets a better baseball team? I'll ask you again at this very moment than they were at the start of the offseason.
Can you guarantee that they add that pitcher that we were talking about?
I'm going to guarantee that they're going to add that pitcher,
then
yes.
I will say yes.
Yeah.
It's reasonable to expect some bounce back from some of the guys who failed in the starting rotation last year. It's not reasonable to lay your whole team's fortunes on every single one of them bouncing back. So I think adding the rotation insurance here and better than that, even a rotation star is really what they need. But then I'll take them against the 2025 Mets any day.
Yep, I would agree with that. So that's going to wrap up our special coverage right now. Much more on this coming tonight, 6 o'clock baseball night in New York, and then we're back here on Mets Hot Stove at 6:30. Much more on the Bo Bashette introduction out at Citi Field, and of course the acquisition of Luis Robert Jr. and the news that Carlos Beltran inducted into being voted into the Hall of Fame yesterday. So that's all coming up tonight on our coverage. That's it for Anthony McCarron. I'm Gary Apple. We thank you for joining us. So long from New York City.